Hello, welcome to Irregular Verbs in the Preterite. I'm Shanice and I'll be doing the first two parts of this lesson. So before we begin, what are irregular verbs in the Preterite? Well, irregular verbs are verbs that follow their own set of rules. They aren't conjugated the same way that most verbs are. For example, mi padre va al supermercado mañana, which means my father will go to the supermarket tomorrow. As you can see, the verb al is conjugated from the verb ir, which means to go. And the predicate are verbs that are completed in the past, so they're in past tense form. For example, mi padre fue al supermercado ayer, which means my father went to the supermarket yesterday. As you can also see, it is the same verb ir, but it's conjugated in a completely different way again, which you will see more of in the next slide. So the verb ir and ser. The verb ir and ser are perfect examples of this. Meaning to go and to be, these verbs use the same conjugated word when writing in past tense. So as you can see on the chart to the right, so yo is foi, tú is fuiste, él, ellos, and usted is fue, nosotras is fuimos, and ellos, ellas, and ustedes is fueron. Since they use the same word, you have to read the sentence to know the context so you can understand which verb is being used. For example, Loy fue a cortar el césped de viento antes volverse oscuro, which means I went to mow my neighbor's lawn before it got dark. In this context, of course, they're using the verb ir. Fue mi mejor amiga en escuela secundaria, which means she was my best friend in high school. In this context, they're using the verb ser. Fuiste a acostarse a las 8 o'clock anoche. Did you go to bed last night at 8? In this context, of course, they're using, again, the verb ir. The verbs dar and ver. The verbs dar and ver also conjugate the same way. Although they don't use the same exact words like ir and ser, how they're conjugated is very similar. Let's see. Dar, which means to give, is diste, dio, dismos, diestes, and diron. And ver, which means to see, is vi, vieste, vio, vemos, viestes, and veron. You can see how they're very similar, and it's just a change of the first letter. So let's go to our sample, which is a dialogue between Chantal and Sofia. So, vi a Francisco and Elda en la partido de fútbol ayer, which means I saw Francisco and Elda at the soccer game yesterday. Es verdad, mi primos lo vieron en una fiesta el pasado fin semana. Really? My cousin saw them at a party last weekend. Chantal, sí, escuché el dio ella un ello de promesa también. Yes, I heard he gave her a promise ring too. Wow, tienen que son realmente citas entonces. Wow, they must be really dating then. As you can see during the various sentences I used, vi, which is the conjugated version of yo, viron, which is a conjugated version of ellos, and dio was a conjugated version of él and ella. And you can see these different examples are all in past tense, which means these things happen in the past. Thank you for listening.
There are verbs with different stems. Other irregular verbs can be divided into 3 groups. There are no accents, and they take the same endings, not including third-person plural of the verbs with J in the stem. Verbs with U in the stem, for example, poner would be puse, pusiste, puso, pusumos, pusestes, pusoron. Verbs with I in the stem, for example, hacer, which means to do, would be his, hiciste, hizo, hicimos, hicistes, hicieron. Verbs with J in the stem, for example, like dice would be dije, dijiste, dijo, dijimos, dijistes, and dijeron. For example, when using it, it would be puse ketchup in mi hamburguesa, which means I put ketchup on my burger. Hieste la comida, which means did you make the food? And dije un secreto en su oído. I said a secret in her ear. These are the verbs with different stems continued. These are verbs with the same pattern. So andar, andav, sabar, so tener, tov, quiere, quieres, poder, pod, estar, estuv, venar, ven, conduce, condu, chaser, chatera, chat, producer, produce. The preterite of hey is hubo, which means there was/were. There is only one form of hey in the preterite, no matter if it's used as a plural or singular noun. An example of using it would be hubo un incendio, which means there was a fire. Another example would be hubo problemas en el restaurante, which means there were problems in the restaurant.